Hello and welcome to another episode of our Women in STEM series. My name is Kaylee Peile and I'm the Director of Development for the Linda Hall Library. Today our guest is Emily Randel. She's the Managing Director at Climate Action KC. Emily, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks.
So to start the conversation, I would really love to hear about your career journey and what landed you at Climate Action KC, because I know you're not a traditional STEM professional, right? So walk me through what that's been like for you.
Yes, absolutely. I began my career in local government. I have a master's degree in public affairs and started out in Oregon, actually living in Portland and working for the city of Gresham, Oregon, and did a lot of economic development work in the city manager's office. I was a member of the green team for that city. Then I moved back home to the Kansas City region and worked for the city of Mission and had a range of jobs at the city there, always with one foot into the sustainability program with the city work there, and left last year as deputy city administrator. But while I was in Mission, I was the staff liaison to the sustainability commission, led the work to develop this climate action plan task force, did an energy audit of all of our facilities and worked to really lower the carbon footprint and kind of guide that work. So that was sort of the bridge, because as a city professional, I was more and more in the sustainability and climate action space.
Right, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So tell me what your experience has been like, though, as a woman in any of those fields. So we've got you being in the government space, the city space, and then transitioning to sustainability. You've also changed geographically. What was your experience like in those spaces from a demographic perspective? Were you the only woman? Were there a few women? What was that like?
I have found that there are a lot of women in each of the fields I've been in. It could vary by department. Of course, I think, you've got like the building department, for example, or others that may be more traditionally male. I think the key is about the senior roles and really being able to move and grow into those spaces. So no barriers per se, but really watching about the equity that is in the top fields.
Yeah, no, I think that is a conversation that a lot of women are having.
Right.
It's okay. It's great to have a lot of women who are in the mid-level leadership, but we need to move up. That's what equity really is. So I totally resonate with that. So from your learnings, now you're fully in sustainability. You're fully kind of a face of Climate Action KC.
Yeah.
What have lessons learned? Like, what are some things that you've been learning over the last couple years, but also what's special and unique about Climate Action KC when it comes to our region?
Yeah, great, thanks. So Climate Action KC is an independent nonprofit, 501c3, that was really founded from an assessment of need within our region. And it was really the bridge organization between the elected officials and local government work with sustainability, understanding that we have a lot of power here at the local level and that we don't need to be dependent necessarily on outside help, but have a lot of agency to move the goals that we have for the benefit of our community forward. So that's where it came to be, and that's, I think, kind of explains a little bit of why I find myself in this role, because I understand what it means to be on the receiving end of climate action leadership. Everybody, I think, there's more and more emphasis on we need to make change, less and less about whether or not we need to adapt to changing conditions, and more about how we do that. And Climate Action KC's reason for being, in my perspective, is really to lower the barriers for implementation of market transformation, really.
Yeah.
And so you have people that were just like me, sitting at their desks, with limited staff capacity, very interested in moving these things forward, but needing a bit of guidance. And Climate Action KC is trying to do that by connecting people who are at a similar stage in the process of evolving their practices, and sharing resources, connecting to peers. Also support for elected officials. So they have a lot of decisions with every agenda that they work through, and making sure that they understand the best places for their energy and their constituents, taxpayer dollars, those kinds of things. We really want to be a resource across all parties.
Yeah. So what does that look like? If you could give some examples on what does that guidance kind of look like for companies and leaders here in our region?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the main thing really is you look at and to varying degrees. Larger companies or others may do a full assessment, full inventory of their greenhouse gas emissions, really study that from top to bottom. Others are just getting interested in it, or, they're looking to save money, honestly, or they're aware of it but haven't really engaged in it. And so we're trying to level set to meet you where you are in your journey, really focusing in on kind of the higher impact elements of that. So, really it is energy use, it's transportation patterns, it's those kinds of conversations. And it often comes to, how do we get started on this? And oftentimes it's working with professionals in the STEM spaces who can be trusted advisors to really guide an entity through that. So we find a lot of that work. It is contract work, fee for service, that kind of thing, to just be an extra set of hands to contact the professionals that will help evaluate those business decisions for any entity. But oftentimes it is celebrating successes, raising the profile of people who are doing the work, and making sure we know that it's not a one-size-fits-all, but to say, oh, that's a strategy that might work for my business or for my government, and we should look into that further. And so we just try to connect the dots for people and really help them along their journey.
Well, and I think that is what a lot of people need. It's like kind of, okay, we know, we have the recognition and the awareness maybe, but it's kind of that little push. Sometimes it's really hard, so I'm glad that you guys are there doing that and serving in that role. So aside from, you've got the guidance, again, we've got the kind of the awareness. I'm sure there's also an element of FOMO too, right? The more of our partners start to work together, other people don't want to be left out of that conversation. What else are you finding kind of in your role, specifically from Climate Action KC, but also just holistically, what else do we need to be doing as a community to get more people to meet us there?
That's great. Thank you for the question. So I think we're in a really interesting moment. I think, we have the Climate Action Summit coming up on April 5th, and we have always used these summits as kind of these milestones in the journey in Kansas City's sustainability evolution, I think. And each moment feels very different. And now I think there is just this growing awareness that we must adapt, and that the co-benefits of any one of these actions is really shining. So it is public health, it is resiliency, it is, obviously environmental benefit, but also, the dollar savings, all of those things are really stacking for people in a way that's quite convincing. And there are, there's work that we can be doing to just raise the awareness for all of those benefits. And I think to your answer of to your question of bringing more people into the work, it's really articulating that for people, because you may come to this from any given perspective, but those things are fairly concrete and being proven out more and more all the time. And so finding the issues that work for you. We're also working really with the philanthropic community to realize what are what is your mission, and whom are you trying to benefit in our community. And we can draw a line. There's a line to be drawn between the climate action that we all want to see to draw down our carbon emissions and our greenhouse gas inventory to the real experience of Kansas Cityans living here every day. And just I think really painting that picture for people and making sure everyone knows that these goals are one and the same, and that we should all be rowing in the right direction, the same direction.
Okay, so I have a question about the individual component, but then I want to get to your event. I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure.
So yes, you guys are kind of covering the government portion, the business portion. What can we be doing for individuals in Kansas City across from the STEM ecosystem perspective? What can we be doing to make people feel empowered and that they have agency from an individual standpoint? And then on top of that, how do we really focus in on the next generation and the younger generations to be a part of that conversation?
Oh, I love those. Okay, I think so. One thing I did want to just come to say is that, especially from my perspective as a local government staff person, oftentimes in any business you move quickly. So there can be decisions made really on the fly. And so I would say to anyone in the STEM professions, understanding your power in baking sustainability into your recommendations from early days. So sustainability is not this add-on concept, something, you can really be approaching any project that you're working on, whether you're in transportation, engineering, building science, any of these fields, to really transform the first proposal out of the gate. So because it's a change order otherwise, and it takes time, and it's longer in the process, or it feels like an alternative, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. And so I think as each one of us is sitting at the desk, that power that comes from this should be the default option.
Yep.
I see it in my professional perspective that this is what we should be discussing first. If we can't do it, we can't do it. But let's talk about that as the base proposal first. And I think that's an exciting little bit of rebellion, I think, in people's spaces. So that's my recommendation. I do think that that plays forward. So you do an RFP, you're talking about working and developing these contracts so that that piece of it is baked in from the beginning. So from an individual level about what we all can do, I think that goes from anything to when you offer an event talking about the transportation alternatives and not assuming everyone is going to arrive at your event in a single occupant vehicle, for example, or just shifting the perspective of what is normal and what is considered first. So that's one piece. For young people considering the field, I would say just tons of the why is so baked in for them. So, and I think understanding the power that a young person has speaking to the older adults in their lives is really, really strong. And I think that story and that powerful force that they represent is really, really recognized among others. And I think, I've been in meetings with a bunch of sustainability-minded folks, and we've opened with what is your why? And I mean, I'd say 80% are the people that are talking about their children and how important it is for that reason. And I think we can get a lot caught up in a lot of things, but really that's why we all are talking about any of this work. And so I think considering the importance and the breadth of how this work is touching every field, it's kind of just find the thing that excites you and dive in, because we need the storytelling there a lot.
There's a ton. And I think that intentional advocacy is what I think that many of us we maybe historically have not been comfortable to be the people who push those ideas forward and continue to push, but I think that's where we are now, right? Like that's the moment that we are now stepping into. So I love those answers. Thank you. So now getting to your event, I'd love to hear about that. Do you have any specific topics or panelists that you would like to talk about? And who is this for? Who can attend?
No, thank you for that. So the Climate Action Summit, I will just say, this is my first year planning. I've always been on the receiving end of the programming, but it started in 2019 with the first summit, and it was held at Johnson County Community College, and it was a really tough moment, just understanding kind of where we were as a country moving forward on these issues, and walking into the auditorium and seeing hundreds of people in the heartland where we're not supposed to care about the climate potentially, everybody energized and ready to move together forward on these issues. And so that was the first one, and it was just moment in time based around the concepts of Project Drawdown, which are, existing strategies that will reduce our carbon and move us forward towards where we need to be. And it was just an educational moment. It was a networking moment, and it was really just a kickoff for Climate Action KC's work in this space. And then there's been 2 summits since, and I think that because they're on this 18-month cycle, each one has felt really unique in the evolution of these networks and these relationships. So we will in April be gathering at Unity Temple on the Plaza, we expect nearly 600 people to come together, and we're really focusing on the concepts that I mentioned before. I think the people that are attending I will have any number of emotions, but also, experience now. We're not new to this game, and a lot of us have been through kind of the up and down roller coaster of federal funding and projects, and some pilots that have worked or not worked. Others of us have, proven best practices that we are ready to share and discuss and grow and build upon. So there's a lot in the room that day, I expect. We'll be talking about the themes. So really still talking about the big swings that we will be debuting the greenhouse gas inventory emission update from the Mid-America Regional Council, which will be exciting for us to see kind of measured progress. The second piece we'll be working on is really understanding our energy, where our energy comes from, the things that we can do that take the big swings at our greenhouse gas inventory, and understanding how buildings and building emissions make up the largest percentage of our region's greenhouse gas emissions, and really needing to tackle how we build and how we retrofit buildings. then we'll talk really about that business case that I mentioned. So we've got examples of how this is really playing out in real ways, so that whether or not there was federal funding or incentives, this is just making sense for more and more people. So we want to highlight those that say this is apart from a political whim or anything else. This is really being baked into our work more and more. And so it's not something that we would ever move away from at this point. And then the third really is that piece that I mentioned, that the co-benefits of this benefit so many of us, that there's a way to talk to anybody in your community and get them on board with collective action. And then we have our keynote speaker is Molly Kawahata, who as a high school student was the high school chair for Obama and served as a climate advisor in the Obama White House. And she is an extreme ice climber.
Okay.
She climbs mountains that I would never attempt. But she's all about hope and resiliency and community organizing. And so I think she has the science-backed, research-based rallying cry that we all need here in the region. So we're really excited to welcome her to Kansas City as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that does sound hopeful. And that will be really exciting. And I hope that she tells some stories about ice climbing, because that sounds crazy. And I don't think even the rock climbing I don't do. I can't imagine doing it with ice on top of it.
Yeah, she's Patagonia did a documentary on her that has over
Really?
1 million views on
Oh
YouTube.
my
And so
gosh.
it's terrifying to watch what she does, but it'll be fun. And when we talk about a summit, we
Yes,
love the parallel
exactly.
there with
I love that.
climbing the mountain together. So
That's very, very cool. So that leads me to my last question. That was a great segue. When it comes to kind of being hopeful and being resilient, whether or not things go well or not as well in the near future for us, what does the future of climate and sustainability look like for us? Maybe holistically, but also from a regional level. What are your thoughts whenever you kind of grapple with this concept?
yeah, I think it goes back to what we said, which is the benefits outweigh the costs or the setbacks, and the reason in the faces of our youth is as clear as we need it to be. And so we have to focus on the things that work. I also think sharing the successes, there's a lot of people that have a lot of wish list items for this. We wish we could be better here. We wish we could be better there. Helping to really synthesize that and focus on the things that matter most, so that we don't exhaust ourselves and that we're really focused on the measurable impacts that we can institute first and foremost, and then add on to the rest as we have capacity. I think that's going to be really helpful. And then just the networking and the peer support, the individual resiliency and taking a moment and realizing that this is a long game, I think really matters a lot. And we'll be talking about that as well. And so I think just sticking together and being strategic, probably the answers to that question.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I do think it's a long game, but I'm excited that you and Climate Action are kind of at the helm of it. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time, Emily.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.